Alright Graham mate, we're going to get a start on this video because you've been donating hundreds and hundreds of dollars and much appreciated. Without you the channel wouldn't be progressing ahead the way that it is. So I just thought I'd take this minute to at least start the video because you've been helping me out a lot, so I think I should help you ASAP. Oh, look at that shaving cut. Right. So, there's a way I wanted to start this. This video is going to be about the joints and healing joints. And Graeme just said to me that, he's one of my donators and subscribers, and he said to me, he's growing older now, he's 50 or something, 48. So at around that age, yeah, you want to be considering, all of these things, everything to do with aging, because really after 30, you're on this like full downhill slope. And other longevity and vitality people have mentioned that before as well. So I'm glad that you're at least asking the right questions. And so I've been thinking for like a couple of weeks how to start this, and I thought just begin. I can make it in parts. I think that's what I'm going to do for you, so that when I get new information and new updates, and think of more to add in to make it a fuller lecture, then I can just do a part 2 or 3 or whatever. So there's some things I want to start with, like what's missing. I thought that's probably the best place to start, and that's why I decided to turn the video on, because we've learnt about protein and calories and kilojoules and all this, right? That's like 90s nutrition, right? 20 years ago we learnt about all the basics. We know about amino acids and all this now. Oh my god, that's protein. And the plants have their own type of proteins, and animal protein is definitely different. I noticed much more acidosis from definitely from eating plant proteins and stuff. So now when you're older, are you a bodybuilder? No. So like you don't really need to worry about like a ton of protein. Just it's about like one gram per kilogram or something, and that's what all the bodybuilders talk about in that as well. So I mean, this is not something you need to worry about because our society's stricken with this stuff, right? It's everywhere. You're going to get your protein. You don't really need to worry about that. My advice would be to switch to as much plant-based as you can, like the chia seed, right? That's a complete protein. What that means is it has all 18 amino acids that the body does not endogenously produce. And also they say, remember, nutrition is just a theory. It's like the Bible is just a book, yeah? Reality is, the meat of the moment, right? So you should be going off your experience. You shouldn't just be watching like channels on YouTube and going like vegan channels or something and thinking that they know, the whole of existence, because I see a lot of problems like intergenerational studies coming out of India. Because Indians, they've been the yogis for thousands of years, yeah? Thousands of years. They haven't been doing that in America or Australia for thousands of years. So, they've got intergenerational studies now coming out of India on veganism and, the detrimental effects and the defects on the DNA level. So, I mean, I'm going to produce those studies. I don't think I put them in the website yet. I'll have to go back and find them. But yeah, I'll get those studies for you guys, because I know a lot of like vegan people are going to be like disliking. Oh well, have you read the studies? Before you dislike, you need to cover the material. So anyway, there are some problems with full veganism, and it's obvious. It's not necessarily for everyone all the time forever. It's more of a reset, I see it, and that can be, you know, daily reset. It can be a weekly reset. I don't know, maybe you ate some ice cream or something, or you know what I mean, like you went bad for a week and you went back on the SAD diet, the standard American diet, the SAD acronym diet, for a reason, yeah? Because it's all acidic, you know, muscle, meat, potato, nuts, and seeds, they're acidic, right? And all the plant leaves and all that, they're alkaline, right? So the SAD diet, what do you eat? It's like, you know, the typical chunk of meat, you know, like a potato mash and like maybe a little bit of salad. You know, that's the way I picture the SAD diet anyway. And I've got a thing where I reverse this, where it shouldn't be a sprig of parsley on top of the meat. It should be a sprig of meat on top of the bed of parsley. And that's how you do this thing properly, in my opinion. Like, it's not 100% vegan, it's like 80-20 or something like this. And you got to work it out for your blood type, which you've got like Mike the Vegan on YouTube, like dismissing blood aggregate palliation and all this, and just dismissing it, makes one video on it. If you're like a vegan YouTube channel, you should be like onto all the things that can be debunked easily, and you should be like, you know, extra informational in those parts, not dismissive. So that's my opinion, but yeah, I think that would be the better way to work it, yeah. So anyway, like, long story short, you want to, you know all these basics, obviously, because what I've already talked about, like alkaline versus acid balance. Yes, I know that's 90s and that's long ago. We all know that obvious stuff now, but still people are not doing it, you know? So they're like, they can put it like to the back of their head. What I'm saying is you bring it to the forefront of your consciousness, yeah? That's what this whole channel's about, you know, consciousazine.net and all that. So it's just like knowing the basics that they don't teach you at school. They don't even teach you this at university. I went to university, I could have went on with a sports exercise nutrition degree. I looked at the subjects and went, no thank you, because it was off. It wasn't, you know, where I could see the forefront of the flow of, you know, people talking about. It was just all old stuff. It seems like it was from, you know, 10 years ago or something. And that's the way universities and all that always are. They're lagging, right? Science is lagging. It's not, you know, pushing the forefront. It's telling us things we already knew half the time, right? And it's very lagging, and it's third dimensional too. So I won't go into all the dimensional stuff now. We'll leave that for another part. And that'll be an overlay. So I wanted to start on the basic stuff. I wanted to start on the missing stuff that we know, but I'm introducing, you know, the basic theories that we already know first, so that I can, you know, show you my perspective of what I'm talking about, like these things that we don't understand, like the 8 essential sugars. I've heard nobody talk about this. David Wolf, you know, that David Wolf fella, he'll talk about stuff like that. But I don't hear like so many people talk about this in the health industry. Like they leave the basics out like this. And no, not everyone. And I follow a lot, you know, Dr. McCullough, John Dullard, all these people, all the famous people that you know in the world. I've got all their emails streaming into my email account. I suggest you guys do the same, because it's just easy and it's free. 20 people watched that video I made like a year and a half ago. Pathetic views. I don't know what you guys are doing, but I think you guys thought by the title I meant, you know, take my emails, because the video was titled something like, you know, best health, like health advice or something, get free emails, subscribe to free emails. And I wasn't saying my emails, and I don't have any yet, and I don't think I'll ever have any free emails. I think I'm going to make everyone pay for all that stuff, because it's taken me, you know, my life energy to compress it all. And so that's why you get a video now, because you've been donating hundreds and hundreds of dollars, you know what I mean? So I'm going to make you a big video now. We're going to go for hours. This is just the beginning, this first 10 minutes. We're going to reiterate everything, go over everything, and so that you can't miss the points. I'll say it 10 times the same thing in a different way, you know? So like some things I wanted to start off with was the 8 essential sugars, and that's like not the saccharides from the fruits, not, you know, fructose, sucrose, glucose and all that. I'm talking the fructose and mannose and galactose and those polysaccharides which are in the seaweeds. And look, for instance, here in Uruguay, I can't even like find this stuff. Cannabis is legal. I can smoke cannabis, but there's no hemp seeds in the shop. So I mean, the health shops here don't know what they're doing at all. Even like the biggest one here I've walked into is called Madre Tierra, and you know that's like the monopoly style health shop here in Uruguay. And they don't even know what they're doing. Like, they have the whole fridge section missing. So you've got all your kimchi, kombucha, kefir, all missing. You know, all your healthy gut all your healthy gut bacteria and probiotics, and the whole fridge section. Everything else that I know from back in Australia, for instance, that's meant to be in that fridge. There's not even a fridge there. Like, with all this stuff. This was a year ago that I went around the city and I had a look, so I don't know about now. Maybe they've updated it. But I went, you know, a couple of months ago into one and they didn't have it. In their fridge was like sugary drinks and stuff. And see, this is the point. These are the basics that a lot of people are missing. They know about probiotics, but they just don't get it, or they're not like integrating it into their life. You know, like when you take a psychedelic trip, you're not meant to be, you know, tripping every day, because it takes you a long time to integrate it into, you know, third dimensional experience. So it's the same thing with this knowledge, you know, like you need to integrate it. Obviously, you know, they say knowledge is power, but it's not going to do anything. It's not going to have any power if you don't use it, you know. So with the 8 essential sugars, let's just stick to that for a minute. You know, there's no seaweeds anywhere around. Like in Australia, I can find them and it's okay. I can easily add it into my diet. And you're from the UK, you're going to be able to do the same thing. You're easily going to be able to find 8 essential sugars. And you think, what's this have to do with the joints? We're going to get there, don't worry, we'll get there. First, you need to build the base so that you're not in a constricted mental acid state. Anytime I eat any food, it either expands me from the heart out or I get a contraction feeling. And this is like mental acidity. This isn't yet, you know, I feel acidic on my body all over or something. I need to drink a green smoothie or something. I'm not talking about that. It's like a mental acidity. It's before it even hits into dense feeling. You don't even feel it yet. And you know, if you're in this state where it's like a more relaxed nature, your body's not as constricted because it's not under as much pain from processing, for instance, processed foods. That puts the body in more pain. Each cell in your body then has to undergo more energetic output and to, you know, digest, which you don't barely do, these like synthetic packaged foods from the shop. Now, we're only doing as good as we can, you know what I mean? Like, I can't afford to be eating the best food ever right now, and let alone I can't afford it, but it's not even here. So, you know, we've got to contend with our situation, obviously, and that's why I think it's important to bring this part into this talk. A massive background, not just like where we're going to go into enzymes and stuff, you know, like enzymes are the little workers. They unclog things. When you do chi swallows, for instance, like the Taoist monks, there's a technique that I know where you do chi swallows. That's chi energy. Chi energy is associated with metabolistic movement. Nobody in the world, not Aubrey de Grey, none of them know the metabolism perfectly. Check out all the metabolistic diagrams you can find on the net. None of them are complete. They'll admit to you that they don't know what they're doing, thank God, because if they did know what we were doing, we'd be living like twice as long. If they did understand the metabolism, you know, fully, we'd be able to carve out, you know, more than, I think, even the telomere 150 years of age, which is when your telomeres, this is the general idea that the telomeres on the end of the chromosome, they fall off and as your chromosomes divide and all that, but that you get 150 years flat out of that. Like, that's if nothing else happens in your life. For instance, if you're super stressed, then the telomeres and the chromosomes change functionality, and it all revs up the speed, so you die quicker. So stress actually obviously contributes. And then there's sleep, right? And even for me right now, like building my body a bit, it's like known, and I've realized this, from my experience, but it's known that if you sleep better, you get more testosterone production. And testosterone is a androgen, right? It's an androgen, or a steroidal hormone. It's a natural body steroid, in other words, like vitamin D from the sun. The sun is also a steroid, so it's a steroidal hormone. And this is why I think we need to bring all this into play, because what I was saying about stress is when you, for instance, you can get stressed in a manner from not getting the sun. You get all weak, and that will start to stress your body. There's just so many ways you can get stressed. And this constricts you, and that can even have an effect on the things in your joints, all the little calcite, nanobacteria and all that. Little calcites in there conjoining, making cadmium shells and all this, all the stuff that they do to sit there in your joint and, make you have, old age joint pain. So, I mean, there's all these back factors. We're going to go into all this. This video is kind of like a summarization, and then what I want to do is when I get the computer, I want to, visualize all this. We're going to, go through a million peer-reviewed journal articles, and we'll Wikipedia the crap out of it and whatever you want. But this video is really just like a summarization and an introduction and starting from somewhere. Because I didn't know where to start, and I thought, well, let's build it up from a background to a pinnacle. So we're probably going to end up in like enzyme territory. I don't know, I have a feeling. And I'm going to need, pictures for this, so we can go into the cellular processes and all that. And that's why I said, I'm not going to be giving free emails out. Like, I don't want to waste my time with like one simple free email, and then that wastes my time too much. I'd rather be researching, and then I can summarize things in big long videos like this. I think that's a more efficient way for me to work, actually. Right, so where was I? Stress. Well, that constriction feeling that you get when you have mucosal sticking, I call it. So let's talk about the mucosa, which is one of the humours, which is an immune system. Remember the 4 humours. We don't just have the cell-mediated immune system, which is the white blood cells and all that. We have the humours. So we have the blood, lymph, bile, and what did I miss? Blood, lymph, bile, and phlegm, or mucose. And I've always said that the mucosa is the most downward facing humour. And no one ever said that before, because no one understands the dimensions properly. So what I mean is it's the most downward facing because it's the first thing that touches any of your food. The mucosa is over your tongue, it's over your lips, it's covering your cells. Do you see what I mean? So the mucosa is actually the first thing that touches this physical lower dimension, like the food that you put in your mouth, right? So that spreads along your mucosa with your enzymes, and your enzymes break food down, right? Your saliva. It also carries things to everywhere in the body. So when you do chi swallows, the idea of these Taoist monks doing the chi swallows, and they do up to 1,000 per day. Do I do 1,000 a day? No. I do sometimes a couple of hundred chi swallows though, so always at night time I end up swallowing a lot, and you're clearing your sinus out a lot. I'm also clearing the synovial fluid between the joints out with this method of chi swallow. So you're bringing higher energy, and it's not farce or fallacy. It's just that our instruments, have trouble picking this up. Although chi is very obvious. Chi is already You know, they relate it to thermodynamics. It's all evidenced out. It's all empirical and all that. Because, you know, I remember even years ago watching Guinness World Records, you had that Chi Master come in and he heated up the towel on the guy's head. It was a wet towel and he heated it up to 90 degrees or something. So it was evaporating. The water was evaporating. He only had his hands. It was, you know, on the stage of Guinness World Record and everything. They'd done it all properly. And he had to do it twice, I think. He had to show it twice. And so sure enough, because I don't want to, you know, say anything about that video online where you've got the guy like putting his hand to the piece of paper that he scrunches up and then it lights on fire just from his chi force supposedly, because he could have put an accelerant on that piece of paper, which is what some people claim, that he put some accelerant there first. However, do you realize that doesn't matter? Even if he put an accelerant there, he still heated it up with just his hands. He didn't have a lighter or a match or anything like that. So chi's all, you know, chi's very obvious, and you know, that's not like prana. Prana we're like never gonna, you know, be able to really pick up with our instruments, I think. You know, maybe in aura stuff, but I'm considering no. Only the after effects. It's like inferral. With the dimensions, it's a lot of inferral. But I believe what Nikola Tesla said is true. The more we look into the unseen, we're gonna, you know, if science focuses on, you know, non-physical science, we're gonna have more progress in 1 decade than all previous centuries of science. I believe that too. I understand. I can see ways in which that will happen, like the particle and the wave. This whole idea, that whole notion of the double slit experiment and observation affecting the particularization path. You know, particles have a length. Did you know that? Particles have length. I find that interesting. Well, what that means, why I say that is because it's associated with your focus. How long can you hold your focus for? Means, you know, it's something to do with the particle or the particularization path through the wave function, so that you create something, you know, a locked-in space-time particularization known as a particle, which is always viewed from the past, don't forget. Which is why you don't want to be looking at your body. There's another little point. You don't want to be just looking at your body in a past perspective. You know, there's a lot of people who have a lot of fat and then think it's hopeless. And you're looking at the past anytime you look with your physical eyes, remember? All the light that's bouncing around off the trees and here, that's all past. That just happened. But and I've said this before, when we look in our third eye, we're looking up and into the soul template and also into future and past, because spirit is vertical on the horizontal cross of matter. All this, you know, we'll cover all this again. I'm just mentioning it now, so you. What I do when I talk is I go in a large circle, and then I tighten the circles. So we'll end up covering the same thing in a lower aspect or a more finite aspect of it. Okay. So, you know, the mentality of it all, I really think, you know, that's why I'm speaking it, because I think that's been left out. I really think that's important, and I think it's been left out of a lot of, you know, video. What I'm thinking about and why I'm stuttering right now is this morning I watched a guy called Dr. something Berg or something, and I'm not pedantic on spelling, but on his board he couldn't even spell muscles properly. He had no muscles, and then he was talking about how to gain muscle, and I just think that's mentally, like, inept. It's like this whole thing again of a book being reality. That, you know, I just done 8 years of university, so I know all about books and how helpful books can be, but I'm still against it. I still think that the meat of the moment teaches you much more, because reality is multidimensional and a book is not. It's very hard to integrate multidimensionality into a book, and we are multidimensional. A dimension is not just even the densities of light, right? A dimension is just a different angle of something, or a different way that something can be seen. That's a different dimension, right? So I like to add in these dimensions because I think they're all doing the same thing out there, largely, and that's because they're being held accountable by the medical system. And here I am, a shaman out in nature, and they can get stuffed because I'll go live in the bush. I don't care, I'll push the truth the whole time. They can wind me up in court, and I know ways out of this already. But what I'm saying is the medical establishment and all those, the white coat doctor. I like to say the white coat doctor because they're wearing a white coat. Where do you get taken? The loony bin, and you get a white coat on, right? So I like to pay them out because I'm the shaman. All right. So, but it's true, they're all doing the same thing, and that's because they can be held accountable in that, and they're not able to explore as much. Now, what I've been able to do with this tincture business here in Uruguay, making my own tinctures, is I've been able to explore using other people's bodies and my own. And you're like, well, that's why they hold people accountable, Ben, so you don't use people as human guinea pigs. But I'm not. Because they've gone to the medical establishment, they're not able to heal themselves, they come to me. Yeah, it's funny how you leave the shaman as the last one. It's funny as. Should be the first, anyway. So they go to the medical establishment and they can't get healed, and then they come to me and get consultations off me, and then buy my tinctures. So I'm not exactly like experimenting on people, a little bit, but they're willing participants, and they've already been through stages where they're not able to help themselves or get help from the medical establishment. So in multiple countries all around the world, Australia, I've done it here now in Uruguay, so it's everywhere. And the disease is everywhere, right? The surface virus is everywhere. I call it pill consciousness. They think that a pill can cure them. It's like Band-Aid curing. You put a Band-Aid on instead of, thinking about why you fell over and scraped your knee. You know what I mean? Maybe you were running too fast. Maybe you weren't thinking or something. That's the etiology. The etiology, the causality. And what we have in society is the opposite. It's like, here, take this pill, give us some money. I call it pill consciousness anyway, and it's what you guys call, Band-Aid cures, Band-Aid curing. And I think all this connects to the mentality thing that I was talking about. See, this is again like a circle going back and touching on mentality. It will all come together, this talk. What all this has to do with the joints in the end, don't worry. And I think that's again a mental thing, a mental function that we need to fix. So you need to fix that code right up. It's not about looking at how can I immediately help myself. It's about let's stop that from happening ever again, right? And actually curing it. That's curing, not just like helping it or healing it, but properly curing it so it doesn't occur again. Because people fall back in the same patterns, and it's very difficult not to in this society where at every single shop you have sugar and meat and bread and milk, all the crap. It's all there. It's all there waiting for you to just, fall into it. Fall. And there's definitely a fall, and you feel the fall every time. You come down like a bitch. Like you've just been on some, heightened trip. You just, you're buzzing, you're cruising along at hyperspace speed, and then you eat some crap, dirty food, like one of these dense foods or some packaged food, and you feel the fall. You need to rest. You literally feel drained. It couldn't be more obvious. You know what I mean? So I suffer this as well as you guys because I'm living in the same world as you guys. So I have to suffer the same, endearments. So, look, there's a mental thing we need to get past here that I think everyone needs to change their mind on this, and that is the way the future is pushing. Some people say get ready and hold on for the vegan ride. I get what they're saying, because what we're doing, like for instance, it's a good example to use the cow industry and how just the percentage of cows now that they're finding tumours in, for instance, like the percentage, is rising. It's always percentage that matters, remember, because we're in a spectrum duality universe. So there's always going to be a spectrum. It's never black or white. That's why I'm against full veganism, because it's black or it's white. You know, there's a grey scale. There's always a spectrum. So do you see how mentally getting a grasp of all this really is important? Like, this is obviously a broader health overview, but I think when I start to get down into enzymes and mitochondrial DNA, or mitochondrias as drivers of consciousness and drivers of physiology, and they connect with mentality, you're going to see exactly what I mean. Now, remember that in the movie Star Wars, you have the Jedi using the Force, yeah? And when they discover, I think it's Star Wars 3, is it? I forgot what Star Wars. When they discover Anakin Skywalker, right? And who is it? I forgot his name. Qui-Gon or whatever his name is. He says he has about Anakin. He has the highest midichlorian mitochondria. He has the highest midichlorian count we've ever seen, right? And he's meant to be the one who balances the Force, and, you know, a bit of a Neo out of the movie The Matrix, right? Same sort of deal. So my point is that it sounds awfully similar to mitochondria, and then when you understand and you research mitochondria DNA, the DNA in our DNA, the DNA in our cells, and you know, all of this, but mainly the mitochondria, when you discover that they're also like a separate entity, did you guys, it's like they've crawled into our cell. Have you realized this? That mitochondria are, and they're motors of consciousness, and they've like invaded the body. I find this very interesting. There's also documentaries on viruses and evolution. The planet doesn't make mistakes, is all I have to say about that. Of course, viruses can seem like it's, you know, something terrible for you at the time. But it turns out that viruses are very, very, very associated with, you know, hominid evolution, planetary dynamic evolution. If you really research viruses and evolution, it's scary at first because you're like, what? Aren't viruses the bad guys? They say that nothing is right or wrong, right? You just have to see the reason and meaning behind it. So, yeah, interesting. So mitochondria and you know, as drivers of consciousness, and that's where we're going to end up too. We're going to end up at the cellular level. That's why I want to wait till I get the computer. We're going to show you everything on Google or whatever search engine I decide to use. Geez, people are getting pedantic out there. Yeah, so we're going to go like into the, you know, the smaller scale of the enzymes, the mitochondrial DNA. We'll go into cellular dynamics and all this. What can I say just off the top of that? Well, let's circle back around and talk about, in that context, let's keep the context, and again mention the, so we'll keep the context of the cellular level, and again mention polysaccharides, or the 8 essential sugars. So you probably didn't know that there was 8 essential sugars because nobody is really saying it. Everybody's underplaying it. And what I find funny about this is that, you know, if you don't have these sugars, and I can feel it on myself, you get stupider. No wonder everybody's a stupid idiot, because they're eating refined sugar. You can't even think on this stuff. It's not what your brain runs on, and you're like, oh, it runs on glucose, Ben. No, not just glucose. That's the bulk. Like when you work out, you talk about protein as a bulk, but then you shouldn't forget all of nutrition. You know what I mean? It's the same thing. So with sugars and the brain, yes, it runs a lot on glucose, but that's not the only thing involved. You know, you shouldn't forget everything else. So that's what I mean. Nobody's talking about these 8 essential sugars, and they should be the forefront because they're the pertinent problem. Why are they the pertinent problem? Because there's none anywhere. There's no seaweed being sold at the corner shop. The corner shop has lollipops, Snicker bars, and Coca-Cola. Your brain doesn't use this shit. Parasites in your body use this, and you're going to get viruses on the brain, drinking all that kind of stuff, doing all this. It's the opposite of health, and this is why I bring mentality into it. So I know this talk's meant to end up about joints, but you've helped me so much, Graeme, that I'm trying to help you beyond joint pain as the way you see it, as just, oh, okay, there's going to be a plant that I can eat for the joints. Man, I can sit here and I can reel off plants all day. I can make a whole list for you right now, like, celery. Celery is a fantastic one for the joints, not only because of the sodium, enzymatical action, right, but silica. And it's probably the best place to get your silica from. Some people might say horsetail and all this, but you often get this dried, and something that's dried and dead is not as good as the alive thing that has the fractal water present, the vortexing water present, crystals in, acceptance of higher energy present, and so on and so forth. Like, there's so much that people are forgetting when they take supplements. And this is, again, pill consciousness. You see, it's like, hey, I'll take a multivitamin. I don't even recommend multivitamins. Get far away from them. I don't have multivitamins at all, never take them anymore at all. Because when you eat properly, you don't need multivitamins, and they're pills, and also they're dead matter, and it doesn't pass through the body properly. And it's another thing that you need to break down. You see it? You see it now, don't you? Because you're thinking, oh, a multivitamin, fantastic, I get 100 vitamins in one, yippee-ki-yay, yippee-doo-dah. But it's not only that you're getting, some dead, non-fractal, by the way, isomers and isotopes. And that's what they are, they're isotopes. Have you guys even researched what a vitamer is? Not vitamin, but vitamer, ER. Because every vitamin has vitamers. So, sorry I'm picking my nose a lot, it's itchy. So, every vitamin, like vitamin A, has 7 or 10 different vitamin A's. It's not just, hey, this is vitamin A and then that's it. There's vitamers, right? And they're different isotopes. And what I'm saying about multivitamins is they're dead, and it's just another thing that you have to work through your body or break down. Because that's what your body does to get the nutrition. You're not eating just for the fun of it, right? You're eating to sustain the body, and it's about nutrition. Not bulk food, not about just protein, it's about nutrition. Protein is a nutrition for the body. Amino acids are nutrition, right? So you're eating for nutrition. So when you take a multivitamin and it's a dead fractal isotope, an isomer, that's a vitamer, not even a natural vitamin from nature, you're doing it wrong. This is the same people pushing the same thing that you should have already learnt. Hey, these people can't be trusted. The pharmaceutical established medical system, essentially. And look, you get in big trouble for saying that, but it's true, because I just said it. They're pushing poison. Have you looked into fluoroquinines and all the antidepressants out there? No wonder so many people are shooting America up. This is what I mean about, like, when you take a dead thing, it doesn't make your body feel good and alive. Why would it? It doesn't even make sense. You eat something dead, you're going to feel dead. It's very obvious. So, this is why I think I wanted to go over this from a very base level, because, people don't discuss this properly in the establishment. Like, I was just watching this guy's video, something Dr. Berg on muscles, how to get more muscle growth. I was just thinking, he doesn't even have muscles. He can't even spell muscle up on his whiteboard. You had MUSL. Anyway, I was thinking, you're a doctor. Okay, interesting. Doesn't have muscle, doesn't know like the first thing. Oh, okay, he knows the first thing about muscle. Here's what he said, and this is the first thing. Don't have more fatty proteins because then you don't have as much, insulin spiking, and you don't become diabetic or hyperglycemic, right? This is the first thing about all this stuff. So this is what I mean about the medical establishment, and I've heard that a million times. I can probably point you to 100 videos where they say the exact same thing, and there's no need to repeat this. So that's just people getting views, again for energy, for money, and that's the opposite of what I'm trying to do, even though I need money to live. In some respect, I can't just live totally off eating leaves all day, and it takes too much effort to dig up root vegetables all day and all this, So I do enjoy money still, and I still go buy stuff from the shop. But we need to get away from that. And look, at the end of the apocalypse, in about 60 years from now, in 2089, it is the return to nature. That's how this apocalypse ends. There's a return to nature in 2089. So at the turn of this century, we'll figure it all out. We'll have a lot more biomimicry devices. We'll eat, a lot more naturally. We'll figure it all out because the numbers are staggering. What numbers? The cancer rates, the diabetic rates, they're all rising, and everybody's acting like they don't know what the problem is. It's the sugar in every single shop, in every town, everywhere in the world. Yeah, I just said it in one sentence. That's the main problem. The sugar everywhere, in every shop, in every town, everywhere around the world, and that moreover, that there's no alternative. That's the oligarchy. That's the monopolized state, that the sugar everywhere. You can't get away from the stuff. It's even in the health shops. And my point is that there's no alternatives, and and then people are looking the other way like, oh, what's the problem? Why are we getting cancer rising? Oh, it must be the sun or Fukushima or I don't know, something else. It can be those two things as well. But look, in the end, we all know about how cancer is fungus in nature, and obviously you can kill fungus really well with things like my olive tincture, the olive leaf extract, which has the oleorupine, which is going to be a big friend of ours in the future, just like garlic. Because why? Well, look what's happening at the hospitals all around the world. They're giving which means one, mono antibiotics. Then what do they do if the mono antibiotic doesn't work? They go, oh, wait, we'll double antibiotic you. Yeah, two. Two's better than one. They barely know what they're doing. I'm telling you, when you realize all this stuff, they barely know what they're doing. Look, garlic has been discovered to have up to 40 different, 40, not two, not one, 40 different antibiotics. That's why I can say it's going to be a large part of our future, because we're building, not getting less, but we're always getting more resistant, right? Antibiotic resistant super bacteria and super bugs, they call it, right? This is only happening more. If you ask a scientist who's a chemistry biologist or something like that, they know, because they're the ones researching. They're like, oh crap, we need to find out how to beat this certain superbug in within 10 years, or we're all doomed. Actually, I saw a chart about the fungus that is spread from our monoculture. We're going to learn everything in this apocalypse. There's not going to be a stone left unturned. Apocalypse in Greek means uncovering. So it'll be uncovered. Why? Why is monoculture stupid? Because then the soil is depleted and right? All this stuff seems obvious, but why aren't they stopping it then? They all act like they know what they're doing. Then how come none of them have turned to polypermaculture? Barely any farmers out there. You can see my food plant teaching playlist, and you can see the farm I worked on in 2015, Tim's Farm. there on Clothiers Creek Road in North New South Wales, Australia, and he actually had polyculture. He had exotic fruits there as well, not just the main like plantain, banana, passion fruit. He had tomatoes growing around. He had taro. He had dragon fruit. There was just pawpaw, papaya, carica. There was just a lot of different foods, and I thought he was doing it right. He had soursop family. What's it called? Custard apple. He had avocado. And I worked on that farm for a year in bliss. I got free food and I got paid like $23 an hour. It's fantastic. This is because he was doing it right. He didn't have to pay us $15 an hour because he was doing it correctly. He had the money to share around. If he was only doing it monoculture, I guarantee you, like all the other farmers in the region, who you'd go to their farm and they say, "Oh, we can only pay you $15, mate." I'm like, okay, well, how come Tim can pay $7 more per hour? It's because he was doing it right. He was doing polypermaculture. He had the money, he had the fruit stands set up so he could sell more than one fruit, which attracted multiple. It worked under a gravity effect. Multiple purchases. Like if you go to the shop, a supermarket, you go to buy shoes and you're like, "Oh, I'm hungry. I'm going to go get a bit of food as well." That's the gravity effect. And that's what every farmer can be doing. Every farmer can have their own supermarket out the front of their farm. It cost him a lot to set it up, but once you set it up, he's his own little supermarket now. So, from out the back in his backyard to the front yard, he doesn't have to do anything else in his day. He can spend all his money on the workers, then he can do what I know people like that do, which is, trade shares or passive income strategies. And then ultimately you pinnacle and you do great work or magnus opus because you've got time. The whole point of this ridiculous society and the serfdom is, and in Uruguay it's really bad. In Uruguay they work 6-day weeks. 6 days. If that isn't slavery, that's all your time taken. Nobody can be doing great work here. They don't have the fucking time. It's off to work. See you later. It's like march off to work in a straight line. And, this is like a very good example of, why I always go on about great work, because it's the pinnacle. It's the concrescent thing that a human does. That's what you do when you have the time to do it. But have you noticed that they construe society so perfectly that the inflation, etc., the rent, compared to the average wage and so on, it's all construed perfectly so that you have to stay in the rat wheel, right? Like a little rat. And that's why we call it the rat race, trying to beat the other rats to a little bit of cheese. It's pathetic. This is not our future at all. I think we're actually going to be spread out in nature much more. I kind of like how I'm living out here, but, I won't have to pay land rates or rent or anything to anyone. All that's going to be done away with. All this system's going to be completely overhauled because it's not sustainable. It's systemically self-flawed. So it has to end. So I think the way we're going to be is like the stewards of a bit of land. So I might take 10 acres and I'll work that 10 acres. And, like I just mentioned, eventually you can pay for workers. Then you can get passive income strategies as well. That's already a passive income strategy. You've got people working your land for you, right? And then you can do great work. And the world is like saved. We're not neglecting soil nutrition, and we're not neglecting our own nutrition, which is our own complexity, right? And that's why I go on about the mental stuff in food dynamics and talking about nutrition, because it is important. It's not just looking at the 3D dead matter, right? Spirit enlivens matter, right? Anyway, where was I? Totally tangented then. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, polypermaculture. And so, yeah, complexity. That kind of drew us into complexity. And before I was talking about the cellular level, and if you're going to be more complex, you're going to need more functionality at the cellular level. And that's what I forgot to mention. That's what we went into that whole huge tangent on. I was trying to keep the context of cellular level and polysaccharides. Now, polysaccharide is a complex, long chain sugar. So a saccharide or a sugar is something you have in banana and all that, right? Your sucrose, your fructose, and your glucose. They're just shorter chains. Now, in nature, it goes from sweet water. Have you noticed that natural water is sweet? I'm talking about carbohydrate to oil production. It goes from sweet water. The trees pull it up and they create things like xylitol, right? The simple saccharides, saccharide sugars. Eventually, this stuff all turns into like the avocado or the olive, the two fatty fruits in nature. And that's why I love these two fruits, because they're concrescents in nature of carbohydrate formation into its final stages of thick, dense oil, where you can ketogenesis, which is fairly ideal because, as this doctor was saying today on this video, Dr. Berg, he was like, have more fatty protein, less sugary, sugar insulin spikes and so on then. So that reiterates what he was trying to say as well, right? That's why I always point people to the avocado and the olive and the concrescences. Do you understand that? It's the most complex chain of molecular structure. It starts off as simple sweet water, goes to through a tree, through a plant, and becomes a simple sugar like a saccharide, a xylitol or something like this. And then you get polysaccharides, which is multiple saccharides, obviously, poly, right? So you get long chain sugars. And to keep with the idea of the cellular level, actually the covering of each cell is a phospholipid. What is the outside of every cell, and why is it important? Because you don't want your cells to get invaded, right? Viruses use the cells as zombie cells and so on, like this, for their own little manufacturing needs. And what is on the outside of every cell, and why we want to keep every cell astringent and very tight, and so it's like on guard more, ready to punch, is because what's on the outside there is phospholipid. So yes, phosphorus and that, but lipid, which is fats and polysaccharidal nature as well. That's what's interesting. Polysaccharides, for instance, mushrooms, they will add to your cellular structure. So not only all the beta glucans and all the good stuff in all the mushrooms, but just the structure of the mushroom, the polysaccharide nature, will add. You know how chitin, however you want to pronounce it, chitin, however you pronounce the insoluble, because we don't have the enzymes to solute or dissolve chitin. Same with plants. If you eat a leaf off a tree, you're only taking the nutrition out of them. You don't actually have the enzyme to digest the leaf cellular structure called chitin or chitin in mushrooms. So it's the same thing with the mushrooms. You don't have the ability to actually dissolve that. And this is all done by enzymes. And that's why we want to be eating the alive, enzymatically rich foods, which bread most likely does have none. There's no enzymes in any of this other stuff. I forget meat. Does meat have any enzyme? I think I even read that one time. If meat has some enzymatical action, I've forgotten. But anyway, that's why we're going to do a part 2 and part 3 of this video. I'm going to clear up everything in the other parts. So to do with polysaccharides and your cellular structure, and then bringing that back to what's that got to do with, aging and your joints. Well, your joints are your cells. Sorry to break it to you. It was there all along. Yeah, so I'm sorry for being a smart ass. It's the way I am. So, your cells are made out of all this nutrition and like the polysaccharides, which are sugars, and which are 8 essential sugars, and why I mentioned it. And your joints, ideally are going to be made out of your cells, not the parasites sitting all over them, all the calcite, nanobacteria, and all the viruses. They all work together to create like a pussy mucosal thickness. And then what they do is they concretize this, like concrete. So your mucosal membrane is of utmost importance. I mentioned that, and we're circling back around now, because it's the downward facing humor. All your food will spread out along your mucosal membrane, and anything that has refined sugar, even starch from rice, pasta breaks down to carbohydrate sugar, remember? So it's not just, eating the Snickers bar or the Mars bar or Coca-Cola or something like that. They're the obvious things, right? The over-refined, we've gone over high fructose corn syrup, all of that stuff's obvious. That's known, very known, by like the average person, so to speak. Yet they're still doing it. Anyway, so Candida, all of these bacteria of the gut, which affects your mental state, which affects your complexity, your ability to think, and is the reason everybody is so damn stupid right now and can't hold a higher conversation longer than 5 fucking minutes, or 1 minute if you're lucky, because they're not capable anymore. People have dumbed themselves down by what they're eating, not just by what they're thinking. Everyone's like, oh, they're dumbing us down and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, well, you're doing it to yourself by what you're eating. Because in the end, if you eat right and you still have your mentality and sanity at your forefront, and you're still very conscious and you're able to think, you're able to cognate, cognition, like cogs turning, right? It doesn't matter what shit they push on you from society, because you know better, because you're able to, join the dots and so on, and think clearly. When I eat, if I ever eat too much processed food, dairy, meat and sugar, if I eat too much of these or eat any at all, one of either, I feel it, after I eat it. And I feel that I have to sit down. I feel I can't think properly. So I don't need any peer-reviewed journal articles for this, because you can all eat any of these products and 5 minutes later feel the same way as me. Oh, you have to lie down suddenly. Oh no, what's happened? You know what I mean? This is very, very obvious stuff. So what we're doing there is, when we're concrete, or when we're allowing the concretization of the mucosal membrane, it tightens and constricts the whole body. And I notice that I have to stand and ground and get anionized, negative ions and chi energy and all that has to flow back in, because the concrete is actually like concrete. It's hard. Can you punch through concrete? No. It's the same with your cells when they're trying to communicate to each other. Hence, your ability to not just, cognate and think, but on a cellular level throughout your whole body, you actually communicate, and it's a type of thinking, okay? So anytime your mucosal membrane gets thick, see your spit, your saliva, your phlegm shouldn't be thick. That means that's parasites, that's parasitical activity. That's why I have to clear all the time, especially here now where I'm living in Uruguay. The food's just not as good. In Australia, I was on like the best foods that you could buy in the world, right, as a frame of reference. So I'm not just putting this place down, right? It's my frame of reference, and I have to speak from my perspective, right? I was on like orgonosilica and stuff, like hemp seed, and you know what I was doing for a time, which was very high vibrational? I was getting Jalna biodynamic flavor yogurt. So the flavor was sugarless, but the flavor was biodynamic. Rudolf Steiner created biodynamic permaculture, which he even integrated like what are the stars doing? What are the heavens doing into his agriculture? Now, if that's not a complete system, nothing is. So he was thinking the whole way. He was thinking about agriculture in the sense of the most he could think about it, right? He's like, let's even integrate the star movements and blah blah blah, like how you treat the soil with understanding the soil bacteria, everything. Like he was like pro farmer, but he wasn't a farmer, right? He was in Germany, and I find him funny because he was a complexity knot in a grey background of uniformity. Right, so what I was doing was having biodynamic yogurt, and I'd put seaweed in it, and I'd put hemp seed in it, I'd put like chia seed in it if I had chia seed, goji berries, all the superfoods, maca. You can sprinkle all those complete proteins. Remember, a complete protein like means chia seed, maca root, goji berries, and what that means is they have all 18 amino acids, so that your body has more amino acids, which means it's at a more complex state and it can do more stuff and ultimately end up thinking better as well. This all ends up in not just your joints are healed, Graeme, but you'll be able to think deeper. It's like when you take pure water, your magnetic field can penetrate deeper into the universe. Basically, you say that you can penetrate the field deeper. Same thing when we're negative anionizing on the ground, standing barefoot with our big toe ball, K1, kidney 1 meridian, right? Getting that chi energy or whatever, jing energy as well, primordial energy. Getting the jing and the chi, and jing is jing, like how hard can you punch? That's jing. That jing energy, right? It's something that depletes through your life. Also, they say, I'm pretty sure, the Taoists. But jing turns into qi in the bottom danchen, and then it turns into shen, auric energy. And then this is the one that no one talks about, and what I'm going on about, cognition, or wu ji, W-U-J-Y, and this is part of the crystal room or the upper Tanchen energy, and this is Wu Ji, cosmic epiphany. You see it? Whoa, Wu Ji. Yes, I made that up, but it's clearly the case because, it's like, you have more cosmic epiphany, right? And this is what I'm trying to say, that if you are concretized and fat and all this, you can't even hear what your cells are trying to say. You're no longer you. You can't hear you properly. The Human Bacterium Project, which is like the Human Genome Project, where we discovered all the human body genes, the Human Bacterium Project has now discovered we have 10 times more bacteria in and on us than our own cells by number. 10 times more. So actually, when you look at yourself in the mirror, you're looking at more bacteria than your own cells. What is fat? What's fat? Is it just stored fat? No, it's parasites, and they're pissing and shitting inside you. Where are they going to go to the toilet? All these parasites that are the fat that you're carrying. Not all of it, but when you're, obese, you're riddled with parasites, So obviously there's, again, a spectrum. Like I have quick fat on my belly. I have carbohydrate fat, so that's like not so much parasites. It's going to be mostly energetic storage, which is what people think fat is. But as soon as you get over a little bit of a fat layer, no, that's parasites. They're starting to build colonies, bacterial colonies in there, which you'll have a very hard time removing because they replenish from inside your cells because they're working with the viruses, and they basically turned your cells into their factory for energy. Because what they do is they basically sap the mitochondria, which are drivers of consciousness, and consciousness has a lot to do with vibration, right? Higher vibration. And when you're concretized, it's the same thing as a city. When you go into a city, it's a dead resonance zone. It's a draconian dream, because concrete, whilst it will absorb negative charge or anions, it will not have any higher dimensional embedded information at all. It's the same thing with your body when your mucosal membrane, which is covering every cell, covered in parasites, bacterial colonies, and so on. When it concretizes and becomes like concrete, it constricts your cellular mechanisms, but your consciousness as well. This is what I'm trying to say. Your mentality, your ability to think, your ability to push energy up to Wuji, all of it. Cellular communication, whatever you want to say, it affects all of that stuff. So this is very important to your joints, because when you're concretized from eating so much sugar and all that, and it's mainly the sugar that does that, the meat does an acidosis, right? So meat's not really in this argument right now. It's mostly arguing against sugar. Now meat fat is used. I can feel it. I've felt this, all this stuff. I've had to do experimentation. I've had to eat crappy food for you guys so that I know the effects. Like I had to eat, oh no, I had to drink a Coca-Cola and so on, I had to take all these things. So I'm talking from experience, not just a book or an ignorant perspective, I felt all this go through the body. I meditate while it goes through the body, so I feel what's going on. What food is worse? For instance, it takes several days for me to clear out just a normal 600 ml Coca-Cola. Several days, and it's a type of constriction that's like a tights, like wearing tights. Like, how girls wear tights and you see their sexy ass? It's like that. It's tight like that. Coca-Cola's sugar goes over your mucosal membrane and it creates like a film. However, if you eat something like a chocolate bar or something, what I've noticed is it creates a sludge. Not much of a film, but a sludge. So it's like a toxic sludge, like toxic waste sludge. So all the sugars, they're affecting you differently. Starch from rice. When I eat rice, it's much easier to crack off or deconcretize by doing the chi swallows, by anionizing, by drinking good water, and etc. Things like stevia. We'll talk about all this. It's much easier to crack off the rice starch film than it is Coca-Cola. Pasta. Pasta is a sludge. It forms into sludge. I have to push this around my body with my phlegm and my chi swallows and my enzymes. The enzymes slowly break it down. Astringent teas are what you take after. Astringent teas, then astringent stuff, right? They hold stuff together. It makes your cellular structure, instead of cell wall like that, tightens back up, right? So there's no gaps. No foreign invaders can come into your cell, right? So pasta is like a sludge, and something like a lollipop will be more of a film, like Coca-Cola. So all these sugars, they all end up concretizing you differently and working around the mucosal membrane differently. Now, this is the core, the absolute core, in my opinion, of joint health. It isn't as much to do about, people will go, oh, arthritis, Ben. What about arthritis? Have you researched it? Have you looked into what is creating the arthritis? There's a lot of misdirection. So people will still be eating dairy and stuff. They'll still be eating the same shit that caused the arthritis, right? So there's things called nanobacteria, They create little cages around them so that when you have, I don't know, MSMO or, I don't know, hardcore detox ingredients, the hardcore detox ingredients don't exactly touch them because they're inside a cadmium shell or something like this, right? And this is how it can work. Now, there's other parasites which, in my opinion, when you eat cyanide and stuff like that, it can actually hurt these parasites, like the sugar parasites. I feel them. They undulate and they go, blah, blah, blah. How do I test this? I ate a few apple seeds. Very, very simple. Yeah, I know cyanide and I know it's a poison, but I'm a shaman who does this stuff properly, so I investigate fully. And I don't think it's a mistake that nature has the apple built in such a way where the nutrition is on the edge, the skin, right? Most of the nutrition is on the edge. Then you have the flesh, which is the sugary, energetic part of the fruit, right? The flesh of the apple. And then you have the core of the apple. What's in the core of the apple? It's always much more bitter. The bitter herbs in nature are always the healing. So it's much, and all these bitter indole compounds, all that. Then you have, right at the very center of the apple, the seeds. And, you know, they're riddled and stricken with cyanide and stuff like this. They've got cadmium shells for protection, right? But cyanide, and people will say, no, that's just terrible. But do you see what I'm saying? Like, there is a mainstream view that that's only a poison. That's how they used to see psychedelics. Oh, and suddenly now they're using magic mushrooms to treat war veterans. Oh, isn't that 100% turnaround? They used to just say, oh, psychedelics, oh, that's just poisons, and, you know, before any of it was researched. Now we know the LD50 of psilocybe cubensi is, you know, what is it, like 250, 240 milligram per kilogram, which is double MDMA or ecstasy. So that means you can take a pound. You can eat a pound of magic mushroom before you hit LD50. LD50 is lethal dose 50, where half of the mice or rat population that they tested it on dies, which means you most likely can eat 2 pounds. Don't try it. I've not tried it, and I don't recommend eating that much magic mushrooms. You'll probably go nuts for several years because it's just too far away from the slow progression of third-dimensional reality. You're right, you're correct. Everything you pick up on the psychedelic, it's all perfect, but it's too far away. So to these idiots, you're going to seem crazy. Don't forget the famous quote. Do you remember the famous quote? The thing is about, you know, a genius motherfucker, they look like, you know, a crazy motherfucker to a dumb motherfucker. I love that quote. Anyway. So let's get back on track. The concretization is very important because it's touching every cell of your body and it's constricting you. And it's giving you an acidosis as well. So all this sugar sludge, all this that I've been talking about. We'll go in depth into alkaline and acid in the next talk. That's probably where I'll start it from because I'm going to want to talk about grounding. It's been an hour and 15 minutes now, so I'm going to stop the video in a second. So we've gone over this, you know, we've covered, you know, a lot, not all of it, but I tried to cover it at a higher level, and what we're going to do is we're going to keep circling around these things in the next part 2 and part 3 probably. Part 3 I'll probably use for addendum and tying any loose ends up. So let's stick to concretization before I turn the video off, because I did get a running out of space notification, so I have to go in a minute. Oh. Press the like button, subscribe, because this is not the only video that I'll make of this sort. Be doing this for the next 60 years, the whole apocalypse. So, you know, concretization is, you know, this process of the mucosal membrane turning into like a concrete-like hardening layer. The way this affects your joints is because I feel that every time I have to crack. Yeah, I don't know if you heard that. I just moved my elbow and done a little crack, right? So this is what you're noticing as you get older. You're noticing an aggregation of calcite, nanobacteria, who are like a coral reef. It's like you're building a coral reef in every joint, in every part of your body. Stay off dairy. Milk is no good. You're not meant to drink cow's milk. It's not something that is good for us. Go to notmilk.com. You'll see. I'm not even going to mention anything further. So you get off all dairy, right? Occasionally I'll eat like cheese or something, but it's like months and months in between, and it's like a delicacy. It's, I'm not going to take a chunk of cheese and eat it. It's like maybe the cheese snuck into a meal somehow when I'm out in a city buying like a meal, something like that, right? So I don't go out looking for this stuff. So you can still eat it very occasionally, but you'll figure this out for your own well-being. It's just because I feel better without it. It's not like it's not exactly a poison or anything, but it's a clogging which turns into poison because these bacterial colonies that are the reason your mucosal membrane is getting thick. If it's thick spit, if your saliva is thick, that is bacteria, right? Okay, so when you drink water, notice what happens if you drink natural water from a river in nature. It is so clearing, it's unbelievable. Your mucosa membrane, you only need a few gulps, you only need a few glasses. Then go on to the next level of crapness and, I don't know, drink out of the tap. And notice that the water coming out of the tap, it's all chlorinated, fluoridated, all that, yes, but it's thicker, and it actually attributes more thickness to your mucosal membrane instead of thinning it like water is supposed to be a cleaner. So when you get like all these dairy products into, they thicken up the mucosa. Now yogurt is a kind of exception because yogurt has these good bacteria, the good strains, lactobacilli and all that. What's the other one? Well, there's like 5 good ones that I know, and those good bacteria out of yogurt actually chase down viruses. So again, it's, you can overuse it, become too clogged, and so you have to balance. You're going to have to feel that for yourself. It's not going to be written in any book because your body is different to every other person's body. So you are going to have to feel it. How much yogurt do I need? How much do I eat? How often? After what? Before what? You have to feel all that. It's not going to be written in the books. They're not going to get it right because they're going to be going off like a sample of the population, which is firstly not the entire population, and secondly it's not individualized. Simple. So people act like, samples of the population in a scientific sense is the be-all end-all. It's a sample out of a population which is not individuated. It's definitely only the first glance, not the be-all end-all. So they've got it exactly the wrong way, these status quo minded people. So when you concretize the mucosa, when it starts to concretize, that's when you're going to get build up in your joints because things start clogging. The lymph system will back up. The lymph system has one-way flow valves. That's why if you're fat, it's trouble because in each flow valve in the lymph system, the viruses and bacteria are going to be building because it's clogged. It's like when you rush water through a hose. The hose is going to stay more clean. Let's say we had a metal hose as an analogy, and if you leave it there, the rust is going to build. It separates, becomes more of a clogging thing, right? If you're rushing the water through it, it's going to clear it out. It's the same kind of thing with the lymph system. A bad analogy, but still it works. If you're clogged, it's very difficult to get that back to an unclogged state. So you're better off trying to, week to week or something, unclog it. And this is why, have all the health people do so many detoxes all the time. because they're trying to unclog. They understand this because they can feel this, right? And this is what I'm trying to say about the joints and the aging feeling. You feel like you're getting older. Your joints feel, worn out. And it's not really, they might be worn out because you didn't address the calcites. And it's like rubbing a coral reef backward and forward. You're just rubbing friction against friction. And these little bacterial colonies who are hardened now, they're concrete now, right? You've been concretized in the joints. And this is like this feeling of aging joint pain. We all have it. I'm 30 and I feel what you're talking about, and you're 48, so you're more than 10 years older than me. So what this comes down to is like concretization, and really seems to me to really be largely the mucosa. I mean, we can talk about the blood and the bile, right? And those things can back up. Those things can get pussy. Your pancreas can start producing a lot of pus, right? If you have pancreatic problems, and then that blocks up and makes another problem in the lymph system or something. Or you can have kidney stones from too much sugar or something, and you have kidney pain, and then that's producing a type of bacterial sludge called bacteriocins. So there's an official name for this. Bacteriocins are like products. I call it the shit and the piss of the parasites. Bacteriocins are not the bacteria themselves, it's the crap that comes out of the bacteria. And it's very toxic for the body. I was just reading about this about a month ago, and they're called bacteriocins. I read a bit more into it. And, all these things together, like they all end up working together, like the big tapeworm in your stomach, all the little worms. They work with the mucosal membrane to cover each cell. They order around the little worm. The big worm orders the little worm. The little worms then, they have their own mucosal secretion that they create. There's like sugar worms as well. So you have all these things working with the bacterial colony. That's like a colony that's stuck there. And you can clear off, but then it's still like myco-integrated. Myco, fungi, mycology. The mycology then, the bad fungi are working also with the mold, the bacterial colonies, the tapeworms, the little worms, all to produce this like intercellular sludge and concretization of the mucosal membrane. So these bacteriocins, that's like eating poison. No wonder, you have a lot of people out there who have that like angry acidosis like feeling about them, because it's like you're always at a battle, always at war inside your own body. And that's really, I think, where it comes down to, like, there's a war in your joint. So you got joint pain. It's these little calcite bacteria and viruses and stuff. They literally concrete there and make their home there. The reason that this happens, because I've heard nobody say this, that the reason that they want to even start at your joints is because it's your joint. When you move your arm, it allows for blood flow. It allows for flow, right? Chi energy all the way to blood flow, physical, pragmatic, however you want to think of it, it allows for flow, generally. All types of flow, right? My lymph system is now moving. My blood, my mucosa is moving now. I'll even start to affect my torso, and my bile will start to secrete, right? So all the humours and also the cell-mediated immune system gets active because you've just released all this stuff from the joint. So now my cells are like coming from the bones, the white blood cells are now rushing to this joint, right? So that this joint can be cleaned up. And So my point with all this is that it's not as simple as the mainstream puts it when they're like, do this, take this plant for arthritis. That's not how it works. It's still pill consciousness. They're getting onto the right track at least, but definitely not how it works. Definitely not the way to think about it. They're thinking about it backward. So they're approaching it from behind. You might get a fart in the face. So, so why do the joints get affected like this? Well, like I was just going over, I'm moving now my joint, right? So I just talked about how we're releasing all that crap, but that's not the point. When you're moving this joint, you're flowing. This is the point. The flow keeps the systems clear. All four humours will be cleared just via movement alone. So that's why you could dry fast. You can dry fast your way out. You don't even have to take anything. I recommend fruit and stuff for the enzymes, and obviously you would go straight for your pineapple, your papaya, your protease enzyme in the papaya and your bromelase enzyme in your pineapple. You would go straight for those good fruits like that have the serious, enzymatical action. But you can just dry fast your way out because it's about flow. It's about increasing the flow, and that's why we're going to talk about anionization and alkalinity as well in the next video. So it's about flow, and so that's why they attack your joints. That's why I've covered this from such a broad back angle, including consciousness, cellular dynamics, and all this, because it matters, because it's what it comes down to. Because why are you doing it in the first place? Why do you want to feel better anyway? Who cares? Why do you want to feel better? There's a reason why you want to feel better, just obviously so you don't feel, bad, so to speak, so you don't feel terrible or however you want to put it. But it's also so you can think clearly, because what happens when you don't feel good? You don't think. Who can undergo a IT examination? Like I did a business IT degree. I can't sit there doing an IT exam when I'm in super pain. I can't think properly. So half of this reason for nutrition is so we can actually think as well, because a lot of people are spending most of their day avoiding it because it creates pain. And the reason it creates pain is because the parasitical reaction is down. It's not up into consciousness. Parasites are trying to create unconsciousness, less consciousness. Parasites are not your friend pushing you into higher conscious states, right? It's the exact opposite. So the reason they attack your joints is for a clogging reason, to clog. If you can't move, things don't flow. Right, I'm going to end the lecture there. Benjamin Cowenberg, consciousazine.net, aka Shaman, walking crystal clear.